Okay, kiddo, this is the second half of chapter 7, right? So the first half of chapter 7 was foiling, like learning how to take two parentheses, multiply, first, outer, inner, last, and to get this expression, how to get an x squared plus x plus a number expression. Okay, this is just your general, x squared expression, ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, the second half of chapter 7 is doing the opposite. Okay, so we're doing the opposite of FOIL. We're going to start with this, x squared whatever expression, and our goal is to get it into the parentheses. It's called factoring. So you're going to get it into its different factors, get it into the parentheses, where these two things multiplied by each other would equal this original expression. Okay, that's the goal. So the goal is to take your x squared expression, break it down into its factors. Okay? Okay, so there are rules that we're going to look at for like what to do when they look different ways, right? With pluses and minuses and different spaces here. I actually think it's easier to look at the rules once we've been through some examples. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, this is the easiest possible way to factor. Okay, first of all, and for all of chapter 7.5, the number in front of your x squared is just 1. So we have 1x squared, which is nice because for sure the first term of both of your parentheses has to be just regular old 1x, right? This has to be x and this has to be x, because x times x is x squared. Okay, remember, I'm trying to break down this into its different factors, so that way I could double check my work. I could FOIL this afterwards, and I should get this as my answer from foiling. Cool. Okay, so now all I have to do, okay, is this is my C term, right? If I looked at what did I do with it? Here we go, right? If you look at your original, like, generic x squared equation, okay, x squared expression, this C term, your constant term, that's the one that's going to tell you the most stuff of what to do, okay? So I'm looking at my constant here, and my constant is a positive 6, okay? And then this term in the middle is a positive 5. They're both positives, which is great, okay? Again, this is the easiest possible way that you could get to factor. A plus here and a plus here, double positive. My goal, okay, these numbers here, whatever they break down to be, these two numbers have to multiply together to be your constant. So I need to find factors of whatever my constant is to fit in here. So I'm going to look for factors of 6. So I could have 1 and 6, or I could have 2 and 3, and they would fit in here. Okay? Now, since this is a positive, and this is a positive as well, both of these have to be plus, because a positive times a positive is a positive, and these two things added together are going to give me what my inside term is, okay? So I know 1 times 6 is 6, and 2 times 3 is 6. So how do I choose which one of my factors of 6? Well, if I add them together, then I should get whatever my B term is, okay? So multiplied together, they should equal your C term. And if I add them, they should give me this, okay? Your B term. So obviously 1 plus 6 is 7, that's not 5. 2 plus 3 is 5. So this will be x plus 2 times the quantity of x plus 3. And this is my answer. Okay, the quantity of x plus 2 times the quantity of x plus 3. I have factored out my original problem. And if I wanted to, you could double check your work, right? You just FOIL it out. First, outside, inside, last. X times x is x squared. X times 3 is plus 3x. 2 times x is plus 2x. And positive 2 times positive 3 is plus 6. Combine your like terms, and you get x squared plus 5x plus 6. Hooray, that's what you started with. So you factored correctly. This would be your answer for number 1. Okay? All right, slightly trickier. Let's look at number 2, okay? I know I'm going to be breaking this down. I know since this is just x squared, I'm gonna have x as my first term in both of my parentheses because x times x is x squared. Cool. Now I need to look at what sign I have. Well, this is plus 24. So somehow these two numbers multiplied together give me a positive, but these two numbers added together give me a negative. So if this is the case, I need both of these things to be negative, because a negative times a negative is a positive, and a negative plus another negative is going to give me a negative. Okay? We'll look at the rules after, and hopefully that will make more sense. But I think, again, let's just go through some practice, okay? So I need to, here's my C. I have 24 as my constant. So I'm going to look at factors of 24. I have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6, and I'm done, okay? So all of these multiplied would give me that 24. But I need to figure out which two things added together give me that 10. And of course it's gonna be 4 and 6. So I'm gonna have x minus 4 times x minus 6. And this is our answer. Okay, and we can double check it. The quantity of x minus 4 times the quantity of x minus 6. And then we FOIL. First, outer, inner, last. X times x is x squared. X times negative 6, negative 6x. Negative 4 times x, minus 4x. Negative 4 times negative 6, negative times a negative is a plus 24. Combine your like terms, and you get x squared minus 10x plus 24. Can't see that. All right, let's make it even worse. Okay, now for the first time ever, I have a negative number here for my C. Okay, so my C is negative. So this is a problem. Luckily, I'm still just dealing with a regular x squared. So I have x times x, which would give me x squared. But now I have a friggin' negative number here. So, dang it, all right? What do I need to do? Well, these two numbers multiplied by each other have to equal that. Cool, okay? But that means one of these has to be positive and one of these has to be negative, because a positive times a negative equals a negative. So always, if your C is negative, you're gonna have opposite signs in here, okay? Unlike everything we've done so far. Positive C, I don't know if you can see this. Right, here's problem number 1, had a positive C, both signs were the same, both signs were positive. Positive C, but negative B, both signs are still the same, they're just both negative. Versus over here, now I have a negative C, these signs are different, they're opposites, okay? So I'm gonna look for factors of 9. I've got 1 and 9, and 3 and 3. And if you're looking at this going, well, this is not factorable, because 1 plus 9 is 10, that's not 8, and 3 plus 3 is 6, and that's not 8. I hear you. But now, since we have opposite signs, that means we're taking the difference. So we're gonna subtract. To get your B value, okay? So 3 minus 3 would be 0, 9 minus 1 would be 8. So this is the guy that I want, okay? And now you need to figure out which one goes where. So if you have a negative c, right, if you have this negative constant, it's harder because I need to figure out which one goes with the positive, which one goes with the negative. Okay, so two options, and I'll write them both out. I could have x plus 9 times x minus 1, or I could have x plus 1 times x minus 9. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but they will FOIL out to different numbers, okay? So x times x is x squared. X times negative 1 is negative 1x. Positive 9 times x is plus 9x. And 9 times negative 1 is negative 9. Combine your like terms and you get x squared plus 8x minus 9. Well, that looks good. If you would have flip-flopped your numbers, you'd get x squared minus 9x, 1 times x, so plus x minus 9. So I would get, combine like terms, x squared minus 8x minus 9. Okay, doesn't seem like that big of a difference, but you're getting your wrong inside b term depending on like where you're putting your factors. So the trick is you figured out which factors you're going to use. You're going to use 1 and 9. Now you just look at this sign. I have a plus sign. So your bigger factor goes with the plus. Okay? So between 1 and 9, 9 is bigger. So plus 9 minus 1. And if you look, that's the one that got us the correct answer. So this is the correct way to FOIL out this situation, okay? All right. One last one, then we'll look at the rules, okay? Now everything is negative. So I have negative b and a negative c, all right? I still only have 1x squared. So I'm still just gonna have x and x. That's nice, okay? But again, to get a negative number here, these two things multiplied by each other have to equal a negative, which means I have to have a positive and a negative. So it's again trickier if this c is negative, all right? And I'm gonna look at factors of 48. And honestly, you guys will get so good at this, like you're gonna be so good at this that you won't even have to write down your factors of 48. You'll just look at it and be like, oh, it's gonna be these numbers, okay? But for now, it's useful to write it out, okay? So I have 1 and 48, 2 and 24, 3 and, 16? 4 and 12, not 5, 6 and 8, and that's it, okay? Now, since it's a minus and I have a plus and minus, remember I'm gonna be subtracting. So these two numbers subtract each other, give us a 2. So it's gotta be 6 and 8. And now my b is negative. So I want my bigger factor to go with the negative, right? Because you'd have the same problem here. You need to figure out like who gets your positive and who gets your negative. Well, since my b is negative, I want the big guy to go with the negative. So negative 8, positive 6. And that should be correct. And we can always double check by foiling. Okay, first, outside, inside, last. X squared minus 8x plus 6x minus 48. Combine like terms, x squared minus 2x minus 48. Okay, that checks out. So this is how you factor that correctly. All right, now to look at the rules. All right. So the rules are actually really useful if you just know how to read them, all right? And it just shows you all the different possible combinations of like a positive b, positive c, negative b, positive c, positive, negative, 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 whatever. Here's what you do, okay? You're gonna draw a line right in the middle. You've got positive c versus negative c. That's all you need to know. Because if it has a positive c, positive constant, then that means both factors will have the same sign. Okay, so it'll be a positive positive or a negative negative. So if the b is positive, it's going to be an x plus something times an x plus something. And if b is negative, it's going to be x minus something times x minus something. Okay, but no matter what, both of your quantities, both factors are going to have the same sign. So both are positive, both are negative. Okay, and to get your b term, you will add the factors to get your b value. Okay? So that would be just like problems 1 and 2, where this was your positive c, you're adding together 2 and 3 to get 5. Or you have positive 24, you're adding together negative 4 and negative 6 to get negative 10. Okay? Same sign, you add them together. Versus. Okay, now I have a negative c. So if I have a negative c, then that means I have opposite signs. Okay, so your factors are always going to be opposite. You're going to have one of them have an x plus and one of them have an x minus. X plus and an x minus. Always. Okay, so if you see a negative c, you're like, sweet, I know I'm going to have opposite signs. And you can look and see, well, if this one has a plus b, then that means my plus factor is going to be the bigger number. Versus if I have a minus b, then my minus is going to have the bigger number of your factors, right? And when you have a positive c, you're adding the factors to get that b value. When you have a negative c, you subtract your factors to get your b value. Okay? And this would be just like question 3, right? You had that negative 9, so you went 9 minus 1 to get you 8. Or you had the negative 48, so you had to go negative 8 and positive 6. So 6 minus 8 gave you that negative 2. You subtract your factors. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, it's not too terrible.